when you were growing up in Poland, did you understand what Zadie was doing in the United States or why he had left?
I had no idea what he was doing or why. All I knew was that he wanted to go to Palestine but couldn't get a visa to go to Palestine. So we went to the United States where he could get a visa.
And did you always understand that at some point you would rejoin him? Or you would join him?
I had no idea whether we would or not until it actually started happening.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you said that you got to Nova Scotia, and from Nova Scotia you ended up in New York.
New York.
What happened when you got to New York?
Now, in New York, my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, had 3 brothers in New York. They were all rabbis, Orthodox rabbis. And they had some kids who were my age or a little older. Okay? And they were cousins of them. They were my mother's great uncles, my mother's uncles, and my great uncles. And we stayed with them for about a week in New York.
Do you remember what part of New York City you
Somewhere
were?
in Brooklyn.
Did you have to go through Ellis Island?
Yes.
What do you remember of that experience?
I remember a great big room with a lot of bunk beds. Okay. And other than that, I have no recollection of Ellis Island other than that. And we were there for about 3 or 4 days. And then they got us out of there. And I remember leaving the ship, and we were greeted at the end of the gangway by my great uncles.
How did you end up with the name Leon Gabinet?
Well, Gabinet, I had no control. Leon, my father had a cousin in Chicago, cousin Jeanette. And she said, well, he needs an English name. What's his Hebrew name? Eliezer. Leon.
So when you came through Ellis Island, did you give the name Eliezer?
Sure.
And they didn't get, so it wasn't at Ellis Island that you were
No,
given the name
it was
Leon.
when I went to school in Chicago.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you stayed in New York with your relatives for
About a week.
okay, and then what happened?
They put us on a train. Okay. The 20th Century Limited.
And where
From
did it
New
take
York
you?
to Chicago. And we got off the train at Chicago some hours later, naturally. And there was my father and a friend of his named Castle. His name was Castle. I don't know what his first name was, but he was a friend of my father's. And he had a car. So they took us in the car, put us in the car. That was the first time I saw my father. And he picked me up and gave me a hug and a kiss. And we went to Castle's car. And we went to our first apartment in Chicago, which was on North Rockwell Street in Division.
Was that the first time you'd ever been in a car?
First time I'd been in a bus on our way to Bialystok.
Do you remember how you felt about meeting this person who was your father for the first time?
Well, I thought, who the heck is this guy? Anyway, and I knew he was my father. And then when he began to discipline me for this or that, I resented him. I was not accustomed to being disciplined by somebody I didn't know.
So your first apartment was on Rockwell
On Rockwell and Division Street in Chicago.
It was just your mother,
My mother,
father,
my sister, and my father.
Okay.
Yeah.
No other
And I
relatives?
remember there were 2 bedrooms, a living room, big kitchen. My sister and I occupied the same room, and my father and mother had a bedroom.
Do you remember whether your father was already speaking English, and how was his English?
How would I know? I didn't know any English
Well,
myself, so I couldn't tell whether his English was good, bad, or indifferent. And besides which, we spoke Yiddish at home, Yiddish and Polish.
What time of year did you arrive in the United States?
1934.
No, but what time of year?
August.
So it was right before school would have
Right
started?
before school started, yeah. Yeah.
Do you remember going to school for the first
I
time?
remember going to school for the first time. I didn't know a word of English, and I had a hard time convincing the teacher that I had to go to the bathroom.
What did you do?
Hmm?
What did you do? Wave your arms in the air?
I waved my arms and I said, "Thou game Püschen." She got the idea. She sent me off to the bathroom. Yeah, but it wasn't very long before I was speaking English. As a matter of fact, I can hardly remember a time when I didn't speak English. And not only that, having learned how to read Hebrew when I was 4 years old, learning to read English was a cinch. I was the best reader in the class. She was trying to find material for me to read because I zipped through Run, Dick, Run, you know.
Did you go into first grade or did you go into kindergarten?
Went into first grade.
And what grade was Marion in?
Well, she was in high school.
How many years older was Marion than you?
She was 8 years older than I.
Oh, so she would have been 14,
Yeah,
15 years old.
Yeah, so she was 15, 16. So she was in high school. Yeah, she went to Thule High School, and I went to von Humboldt Grammar School.
Do you remember making friends there?
Yeah, there were a couple of kids that I became very friendly with, but mostly it was the kids on the street. You know, right across the street from where we lived, there were a lot of kids. And they were all Jewish kids.
So
Fred Stone, I remember, lived across the street. Philip Dunn was in my grammar school class. Yeah. And then I went off to Cheder, Hebrew school.
How many days a week did you have to go to Cheder?
Well, my father started me at a Hebrew school that was in a big synagogue, the Galicianer synagogue. And I hated that. So he put me into Talmud Torah Yavne, which was wonderful. That was like the Tarbut school.
So one was very from Orthodox and one was more
It wasn't
Zionist?
so Orthodox, but it was more like a Polish Cheder, you know.
Well, when you say it was more like a Polish Cheder, what does that mean?
Yeah, you did a lot of reading out of the Siddur without knowing what the hell you were saying.
You're talking about the Galicianer.
The Galicianer shul,
And,
right.
and
Whereas in the Talmud Torah Yavne, you learned conversational Hebrew.
Did you have a sense of what it meant to be a Zionist then? I mean, you were 7, 8 years old, I suppose.
Well, yeah, sure.
Well, how did you have a sense? How did you know what it meant to be a Zionist?
Because our teachers were Zionists. And they talked about Eretz Yisrael. And I knew that my cousin Zedel had gone to Chanita.
Did your father talk about wanting to go to Israel or
Yeah,
Palestine
he always
at the
talked
time?
about wanting to go to Palestine, that he was sorry he never got a visa to go to Palestine.
Do you know whether he was trying to leave Chicago and go to Palestine?
No,
or
he was not. Once he was in Chicago, that was it.
So you were in elementary school.
So I was in elementary school, and 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, after elementary school, I would go to Talmud Torah Yavne for 2 hours. And then 3 hours on Sunday. Sunday was a lot of fun because we had an hour of music, and we had Mr. and Mrs. Resnick, the music teachers, and they were a wonderful pair.
And you liked to sing.
Yeah, and they taught us all these wonderful Hebrew songs.
So after elementary school, do you remember high school?
After elementary school? Yeah. But wait a minute. In elementary school, we moved out of that first apartment in 1936 or 7. And we moved on the other side of Division Street into a larger apartment. And my sister had a bedroom of her own, and I had no bedroom. I slept in the dining room.
How long did that last?
That lasted until Marion got married. Yeah. But of course, I went off to the Navy when I was 17, so.
Well, but she was already
So
married
it
by the
lasted,
time
let's
you
say, sometimes it lasted for 10 years. Yeah. Yeah, so all
How
the
did you
time I
feel
was in
about
grammar
that?
school,
Wait, Dad, how did you feel about that, that Marion got her own room and you were sleeping in the
I
dining
thought it
room?
was only fair.
You did?
Yeah. Besides, I was getting to an age where we shouldn't have been in the same
Well,
room.
I understand that, but she was the one who got the room.
Yeah, well, she was the eldest.
Okay.
I didn't resent that.
Was your mother a stay-at-home mom?
Yeah, she was. Yeah.
Completely, she didn't take in sewing
No.
or anything like that.
No.
And what did you understand was your father's profession?
He was a painter.
He was a house painter.
Yeah.
Was he just an independent single
Yeah,
guy?
he
Or
would.
did
Well,
work
he
with
worked.
other-
He worked for his uncle for a while. Then he started his own business and he had a couple of guys working for him at the end.
What do you remember about Marion getting married? It was before you went into the Navy, right?
It was while I was in the Navy.
Oh. All right. Well, wait, hold on a second. Let's stop.